Good evening, everyone. Welcome to iIndia's webinar. So I'm just introducing Ms. Yukti Arora, our speaker. Uh, Ms. Yukti is the process risk and technology practice leader at Sign Wing India and co-founder of women collaboration startup Amulya Consulting Services. She has more than 2 decades of experience in the field of process and risk advisory. She is a chartered accountant, CISA and DISA, and has previously worked as director with risk advisory function of Big Four. Her key focus is business and IT process advisory and audit. She has worked extensively in manufacturing, consumer, automobile, e-commerce, BPO, and IT sector. She is a regularly faculty with Digital Accounting and Assurance Board and Internal Audit Standard Board of ICAI in area of core banking system, RPA, and blockchain. She has developed concept note on RPA for ICAI and has contributed article in ICAI journal on RCA and IT audit. She regularly delivers lectures and trainings for ISACA and Institute of Internal Auditor Delhi chapter. So over to you, ma'am. Welcome and welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chanchal. And I would like to welcome you to this session of presentation on the regulatory framework review. With me, I have Mukesh Gupta. He is a chartered accountant, CIA, CISA, CFE, and he's working as a director with Deloitte. And he has more than 25 years of experience in the field of risk management, internal audit, and he has been working on a lot of new areas also. And this regulatory framework review has a very vast experience. He has helped a lot of companies in developing and auditing the same, as well in some of the organization. So I welcome Mukesh also to this session, and most of the sessions would be taken by Mukesh. I'll just set the tone. Also, I would like to welcome from IIA Women Council, because this is one of the first sessions of IIA Women Council which we are doing, and we have this agenda of enabling and encouraging female members to be part of IIA and explore career in this domain and grow in this field because it has immense potential. So with this, we will not waste more time and straight go to the topic. It's a 1-hour session, and please keep it interactive. You can post your question and I will try to respond on it also. So Mukesh, we can go to the slide and explain the agenda.
Thank you, Yukti, for the introduction. And thank you, IIA Delhi chapter, and more particularly women chapter, in terms of taking initiative on learning and empowering women as a separate section within IIA Delhi. And I think this is spanning across other IIA chapters also. So the agenda which we'll be covering today, first is what is the need for regulatory compliance. Then we will talk about regulatory compliance maturity model. We will also discuss as to what are some of the outcomes of different maturity model which companies have been adopting. Then we will discuss about what are some of the key consideration for internal auditor while they review regulatory compliance. And we'll have concluding remarks as to what are some of the synopsis of the regulatory compliance, and towards the end we can have Q&A. However, if there are any question within the slides also, we are happy to pick it up.
Yeah, so if you look at the regulatory compliance requirement, as per the Company Act 2013, there is a specific requirement under section 134.5F, which clearly says that the organization's directors are supposed to ensure that there is compliance with the provision of applicable law. And this applicable law is a very vast term in terms of coverage, because it could be any law within this thing, and most of the companies are also now operating across geography, and there are some laws for that also, and specifically because of technology things, there are new and newer requirements which are coming. And so the first and the foremost thing which an auditor has to make sure that there is a requirement or a clear identification of these requirements of law compliances, and then there is a process and mechanism to ensure that they are working and designed adequately and they operate effectively throughout the financial year. So the requirements are vast, and directors have responsibilities, and there are penal provisions also which are laid in the Companies Act in case those are not complied with. Further, as per the clause 49 requirement, we see a clear thing coming from the perspective that audit committee also has to ensure that there is enough regulatory compliance framework, and there are reports which are relating to compliances with laws and the risk management, and they have to make sure that this compliances are very well established, and they are again complied with throughout the financial year. Also, there is a requirement as per the CARO 2016 and the new one CARO 2020, wherein it is a requirement for the company to make sure that they comply with and deposit all the statutory dues, and the auditors also have to check it and make sure that in case there are some items wherein there are statutory dues which are not deposited for a period of more than 6 months, then those are reported by them in the CARO report. So they have to review and respond and comply to this requirement which has been specifically laid down. Further, Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprise also has brought the requirement that with respect to MSME vendors, they have to make sure that there is no outstanding, and in case there are some outstanding beyond a certain period of time, then those are clearly reported and the delays reason are also explained. So requirements keep on expanding with new and new things. It's a dynamic world, and more things keeps on coming, and because of COVID, we are seeing there are a lot of regular frequent changes in government policies and also the law corresponding to the same. So it's a very tough task for the companies as well as for the directors, considering the responsibilities which have been put on them. So Mukesh, what is your view on the same?
Okay, so if you look at regulatory compliance framework design and making it operating effectively is a very complex task, and it clearly required certain structure to it. Otherwise, whatever compliance company intend to follow, they may not be 100% compliance in absence of any structured process. That is point one. Also, there are various notification, various guidelines which keep coming from the government, and one has to keep a tab on those notification and make sure that they are complied. For example, during the COVID period, both central and state government have issued about 125 notification, which has direct bearing on companies and corporates. So therefore, unless someone is aware about those notification and keep a tab off, and someone is responsible within the organization to keep updating the requirement, it is very difficult for company to ensure compliance. That's the base point. Now, there is a responsibility which is being laid down clearly on the board and the audit committee in terms of ensuring compliance. So board and audit committee cannot really ensure compliance without having clear reporting line, clear structure, which needs to be followed. For example, if it happens to be a listed company, there is a requirement of having a compliance reporting, means a compliance certificate every quarter, which should be placed to the board, and board needs to take a cognizance of it. However, there is no such requirement if you do not have, if it is an unlisted company. So therefore, it is left to the company to define their own set of procedures. But requirement under section 134(5) continues to be there irrespective. Therefore, in conclusion, it is extremely important for companies to set up right framework, because impact of regulatory non-compliance is very, very severe, and company can't take a chance of not complying. For example, for one of the consumer company couple of years ago in India, there was supposedly a compliance issue which led to significant problem for the company, and it eroded market share, it eroded their reputation to some extent, and there was a lot of damage control which they had to really get in just to set things in right. So therefore, I think all of us really understand the impact of it, and we got to do it. There is nothing like we really can't negotiate compliance. Compliance is pretty much a non-negotiable subject. So that's the slightly a longer answer, Yukti, but that's the way I see compliance.
Yeah, and also that's why like almost all there is a lot of like emphasis from an IIA perspective, and they talk about 3 line of defense, which I think you are going to discuss next.
Correct. So let me just pick it up from you and start the conversation further. Now, if you look at 3 line of model is recently being updated by IIA. When I say recently, it's July 2020. And they have clearly talked about regulatory as a subject and who all are responsible for it. First, management should ensure compliance with legal, regulatory, and ethical expectation. So responsibility is set up very clearly under 3 lines model of IIA, that management is responsible for entire legal and regulatory aspect. And they've also gone ahead and talk about ethical. But since we are not discussing ethical in this session, so let's leave it for the moment. Then second line, which is responsible for ensuring, supporting or monitoring compliance matter, which is like a people who are responsible for governance within the organization, can focus on specific objective of risk management, such as compliance with law, regulation, and acceptable ethical behavior, internal control, information technology, security. So it's pretty vast, and compliance is one of the subjects for which responsibility is being cast upon on the second line. Third line, which is internal audit, they need to provide independent objective assurance and advise on adequacy of governance and risk management. So governance is overarching, compliance is one of the subject within governance. So internal audit is clearly responsible to make sure compliances are taken care of. Then governing body, which means board and the audit committee, should have an oversight with respect to legal, regulatory, and ethical expectation. So therefore, if you were to really sum up the 3 line defense model of IIA, refreshed one, all sections are responsible. Management needs to set up the framework. Second line leads to have specific objective of ensuring compliance. Third line should provide an independent assurance. And finally, the governing body needs to maintain oversight. With such a massive requirement which is being called upon by the regulator under Companies Act or CARO or listing agreement, and also it is being supported by esteemed association which is focused on internal audit, it gives a clear message that regulatory compliance is pretty much a non-negotiable subject. Also, under various acts, there are penalties and prosecution and those are so severe. Sometimes the penalty is up to say 10 lakh, 20 lakh, even 50 lakh in some of the provision non-compliance, and prosecution up to 5 years also in certain cases. And therefore, uh, regulatory compliance is a subject which is important, and it require a deeper focus for organization to really ensure that they are in line and they are not missing anything which is important. If any organization decide to bypass certain compliance requirement, there can be a negative impact on brand, because let us say if it's a consumer company and consumer company decides to overlook certain food safety standards which are prescribed in India, consumer would lose confidence on that particular brand, and therefore it will have brand dilution in terms of brand value, brand reputation, brand recall. Also, if there are compliance issues, investors who have really put in their money and they want to work with the company to make sure that their money is also utilized well and they are getting a good return, their confidence is also shaken, and therefore they may decide to exit from the company. And this is very relevant for some of the global investors, because global investor may not really understand what could be the implication of a particular non-compliance in a country where they may not have much of an idea. Like if an investor happens to be of UK, they may not know in much detail about the implication of a particular non-compliance in India, and therefore they may decide to be very jittery on this whole subject, and they decides to take certain drastic step in terms of calling out certain shareholders agreement non-compliance, or maybe exiting from the company, or deciding any other measures. Now, since we all have discussed regulatory compliance requirement, let's move on to our other subject. Just like there are maturity models, which is like a capability maturity model, CMM level 5 concept, it is the same model which we are going to talk about and discuss in detail as to what are level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, and level 5, and then pick it up from there in terms of outcome and implications. First is the initial level. In an initial level for regulatory compliances are managed by different process owner according to their past experience and knowledge. So the compliance ability of the people to ensure compliance is contingent on their own knowledge, which will largely be past knowledge and experience. Second, which is a repeatable model. Under repeatable model, process owners have developed their own broad list of acts or rules to be complied. For example, a finance have put up certain act on their list, like they need to comply with income tax, GST, or couple of broader laws. So they are talking about compliance of the act and not the details provisions which needs to be complied, because complying a particular act, for example, income tax act or a companies act, it is so massive. Unless you have a structure, you just can't make sure that all the compliances are taken care of. So under level 2, there is an improvement vis-a-vis level 1, because it has put on paper rather than just the past knowledge. But what is being put on paper is very high level, which means the act and the rule. Under level 3, which is a defined state, process owners have developed their own set of applicable list of acts and provision. Now, here process owners are working in silos. Different process owners have developed their own set of applicable acts and provision, but it is not cohesive. So that's in a way drawback of this level 3 model, and which is why when we talk about level 4, that's a managed model where organization-wide consolidated Excel tracker, compliance tracker is maintained, and roles and responsibilities are defined, meaning that all of the checklists which different process owners would have developed under level 3, it is being consolidated at an organization level, and roles and responsibilities are defined. So it is far improved model vis-a-vis level 3 or level 2. But there is something which is still missing, that's level 5, which is the highest level of maturity and therefore better compliance. Under level 5, there is a regulatory compliance tool which is being deployed by the organization. Roles and responsibilities are clearly defined. Compliance evidences are maintained in the compliance tool. And also there is a process of independent review which is to be performed, meaning that in all of the above level 1 to level 4, it is based on whatever process owner has said in terms of has it been complied or not complied or delayed complied. However, when we talk about the highest level of governance, here it has all the necessary ingredient for company to be in compliance to all the applicable rules, provisions, guidelines, etc. None of the level will ensure 100% compliance to regulations, because regulations are extremely complex. Despite having all the structure in place, you may still have some non-compliance here and there. However, under level 5, since the structure is well laid down and it has defined roles and responsibilities, evidences, independent review, etc., it would make sure that at least organizations are complied to the extent of say 95% plus. So that's what is the improved level. Now let's talk about what are some of the outcome of the different level being talked about. First is the initial level. What happens in this level is compliance depends upon past knowledge and experience of process owner. Very clearly, it's a knowledge based compliance model. If that individual has a knowledge of particular act or provision, it would be complied. Otherwise, it may not be complied. Second attribute, compliance level fluctuate with change in role or attrition, meaning that let us say if the process owners who have been working in the organization for last say 5-10 years, basis his knowledge and his previous knowledge, his department's compliance level might be better off. However, if you see that process owners moving out of the organization, or there is an internal transfer where he has moved from one department to another, you may see the compliance level is fluctuating, meaning that there could be a drop in compliance percentage when that individual has moved out of the organization or roles are being changed. Third attribute is that because the compliances are based on knowledge and experience, as we said in the initial point, there could be delay in compliance leading to penalties and payment of interest. Because it's not having any structure which needs to be applied, you can always have compliance delays because some of the compliances might be missed or some of the compliances might be done with a delay, which could essentially lead to penalties and interest. Then because of lack of structure, completeness of compliance cannot be ensured. If you look at section 134(5), it clearly said that company needs to ensure compliance to all the applicable laws and provision at the design level as well as at the operational level. Now, since structure is not existent at this level, compliances are dependent on individual and his knowledge, his experience, his willingness, etc. And therefore, there is a chance where compliance to all the applicable laws may not be ensured. Then let us say if this company happens to be a listed company, compliance certificates were provided without any structure, meaning that he may just put couple of lines in the certificate saying that to the best of my knowledge, I'm in compliance to all the applicable laws and provision. And that certificate is being sent to, let us say, company secretary in the company. Based on all of those certificates, they will put a quarterly certificate to management or the board. But that structure is missing based on which a certificate should be given. Unless that structure exists, certificate is just piece of paper and may not really provide adequate assurance which needs to be done if you were to really comply with Companies Act and other related regulations. Then because this is a very initial level of compliance where structure is missing, compliance level is on whims and fancies or experience of the individual, there could be delay, etc. And hence organization run a risk which we talked about in the previous slide, negative impact on brand reputation, lower investor confidence. That's a drawback of this level, apart from other drawback of completeness of compliance and delays. Now let's talk about what happens in level 2, which is a improved version of it. First is compliance is based on broad list of acts and rules. So therefore, you may find that basic set of compliances for key act might be done. Here also there could, because of the change in role or iteration, there may be fluctuation in the compliance level. However, since he has defined certain acts and rules already, at least that will be taken care of by whosoever has taken the role. He may still not pick up all the relevant clauses which are relevant, but some level of compliance continue to exist even if there are iteration or maybe a role change. Here also there is a high probability of delay in compliance because the structure, whatever structure is there, it is at a very high level, and hence it can always lead to certain non-compliances because detailed provisions etc. are non-existent. In this level also there is a issue with respect to completeness because of the structure is not defining the right set of granularity which is required for you to ensure compliance with respect to various acts and the provisions and requirement under Companies Act, or let's say CARO or other listing requirement. Here they provide compliance certificate, but here it is slightly better, meaning that they will talk about that we are in compliance to, let us say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Act, whatever they mentioned as a process in their system. So it's an improved version. Here again, we will clearly see that there is an impact because of the broader issue of completeness of compliance as well as delay in compliance. These are the two broad aspects because of which we are saying that a negative impact possibility still exists in this type of structure. Now let's talk about what is the third level. Under third level, compliances are dependent on process owner developed list of applicable acts and provisions. So it's far improved version as compared to level 1 where nothing was there. So here process owners have kind of took on their shoulder in terms of defining the granular list of acts and provision which a particular department needs to comply. For example, a finance will have their own set of rules, HR will have their own set of rules, company secretary will have their own set of rules, but nothing is consolidated here. Here, since process owner wise detailing is available, even if there is a change in process owner, you may expect a reasonable level of consistency because the process owner wise or a department wise rule book is still maintained. So we do not really run a risk of non-compliance to the basic acts and provisions which are being defined by that particular process owner or a department. Here, since there is a detailed list which is available, it may not result in delayed compliance, at least whatever is defined here, right? Whatever is defined, you may still make sure that it is taken care of, because when a structure exists, there is a high possibility of compliance versus no structure. But this level also has an issue of completeness because every process owner, every department has set up his own process. When you really put all of this together, you may find certain acts are missing because nobody is taking ownership of those acts. Therefore, completeness will continue to be an issue even in this level. Then here, when they provide compliance certificate is far better because they really talk about particular act, particular provision, and then they need to really mention whether they are complied, not complied against those provisions. So probably the reporting of compliance is improved in this model. But again, completeness will continue to be an issue because, as I've said, that some of the act, nobody will take an ownership, and that will be falling in the crack. Yeah. And I think, yeah, and then finally impact on reputation definitely is there because of the completeness issue. So if you look at the first three level I have talked about, most organization falls under level 2 or level 3. Yeah, because at least this is my experience of auditing different set of companies. Majority of the organization will have some structure of compliance. Some will be at a broad act level, somebody will be at a department head or a department level. But level 4 and level 5 is far improved version. Some of the organization like a listed company, etc., they do have those level 4 and sometimes level 5 also. However, a smaller set of companies generally lies between level 2 and level 3. Now the risk with level 2, level 3 is completeness is a big challenge because it is based on slightly higher level of compliance, which could give you a compliance comfort of, let us say, 70-80%, but it won't take you to 95%, and hence that an issue. And whenever we used to audit a company which falls under level 2 and level 3, there are major issues in terms of completeness. Completeness is the biggest point which emerged from level 2 and level 3 type of compliance model. And also, since it is all based on department wise, when we put it together at an organizational level, there are issues in terms of certain acts are completely missing because nobody owns that responsibility. Yeah. Yukti, any question you have at this point, or I should move on?
Yeah, so Mukesh, like one interesting point which it's worthwhile to discuss is on the fact that there are a lot of cross department compliances also. There are a lot of like compliances which are related to one and other functions, and data and information keeps on flowing. What has been seen by me is that mostly the organizations which are in level 2 and level 3, they generally are not able to make the compliances with respect to them. They cover only on the silo basis their respective compliances, and then they
absolutely. See, I'll give you two examples here, and I completely echo your point. First is, let us take an example that if someone is exiting in your system under Payment of Gratuity Act, you need to pay gratuity within 30 days. That's a rule. Now, because the information needs to flow from HR to finance, and finance needs to make sure payment happens within 30 days, I have seen issues where HR hasn't communicated to finance, and let us say finance is responsible for paying a gratuity, and it falls in crack. And when we get a response, the response is no, because HR didn't respond to us on time, which is why there is a delay. That's example number one. Example number two is, let us say in a factory setup, someone in the plant is being responsible for scrap disposal. Now he has been disposing scrap, and in the scrap disposal, he is also disposing of e-waste. Now, as we know, e-waste has a different set of regulation in terms of how would you dispose of. There are certain agencies you can't hold at beyond a certain level, etc. Or let us say hazardous material or a bio waste, etc. There are different regulations. So if that same scrap person keep disposing of all type of scrap, he may have no visibility of the compliance, and therefore it will fall in the crack. Yeah, Yukti.
Correct, absolutely. And also, like one of the participant has raised, that is level 5 dependent on earlier level, then how it is reliable. I think you are going to cover in the next few.
Yeah, so when we talk about level 4, level 5, as I've said in different levels, I will show you certain pros and cons of those level. Hopefully by then the question would be answered. If not, I will take it up at that level.
Yeah, sure. You can proceed, Mukesh.
Okay, thank you. Now we are on level 4. Under level 4, there is a company-wide compliances which are adhered, meaning that there is a composite list of various acts and various provisions, and there are roles and responsibility which are being carved out against each of the compliance. Here, since it's an organization-wide compliance tracker, you may find consistency in the compliance level, even if there is a change in role or attrition, because somebody is owning it up at a department level. And these responsibilities are given either to internal audit or to a company secretary or a legal department, etc. They chase with different set of people in terms of have you complied on time, etc. And then based on those certificate or a confirmation, they proceed further in terms of organization wide certificate. So it is an improved level where compliance level is not really contingent on change of role, change of people. Here, even though compliance list is available, the challenge which we see most of the time is compliances are very, very dynamic, meaning that in a year you may find across various act at least 100 amendment which would have come, right? So unless someone is tracking those amendments, you may continue to be in default because some of the compliances would have perhaps changed in terms of timelines. Some of the compliances might be changed on account of some stringent regulation which has came, which have been introduced, etc. So this level also carries a risk of non-compliance despite having an organization-wide compliance framework. As I've said that since owning up modification to the compliance requirement, with this level also we see a risk of all the applicable act may not be ensured, primarily on account of two things. Since it's Excel based and therefore there is no tool which gives you a right set of alert, etc. Second is amendment of various provisions may not be taken care of, and hence completeness continue to be an issue even at level 4. Here compliance level you can roughly assume about 85%. Here compliance certificate is given based on granular roles and responsibility. People will report against each of the acts and provision based on their names being mentioned. Therefore it is improved, right? However, you may continue to see an issue with respect to some of the compliances which are being misreported. Now why we say misreported is because if a process owner is left to his own judgment of compliances without having an independent review process available, sometimes he may interpret it differently. That is one possibility where misreporting will happen. Second possibility is he may not like this to be flashed to the management, so he may report it as complied. However, it may not be complied. So that's a risk which will be there under compliance level 4 also. And definitely there is going to be an impact if you miss on certain compliances. However, here possibility of non-compliance is significantly reduced as compared to the first 3 levels. By then you would have noticed that most of the participants on the session would be falling under either of the level, and there are very few who will fall under level 5. So let's talk about what this level 5 is and how do we really ensure better compliance. Under level 5, which is the highest level, optimizing, first is company-wide repository of applicable acts and provisions are defined. That's a fundamental attribute of this level. Second is acts and provision wise roles and responsibilities are clearly laid out. These two attributes are there even in level 4. Let's look at what is the difference. compliance evidences are preserved in the tool for future reference. The differentiation here is company is going for a compliance tool, and when you have a compliance tool, we can do a lot of things which are not possible in an Excel based compliance model. Let us say you can define an access rights, who can submit compliance, who can review compliance, so it is a maker checker. Second, you can always define what is the type of compliance for which you require an evidence, what type of evidences are required. A reviewer or an approver of the compliance can look at those documents. Okay, and you can always set up a frequency of a compliance which is ahead of the actual due date of compliance. For example, certain organizations are very proactive. Let us say if a TDS return, TDS payment needs to go by 7th of the month, they set it up internally as 5th of the month. So therefore, on 5th, a dashboard goes to management saying that what are all the instances where tax is still not paid. So you have 2 days in the organization to still make a compliance. So the compliance model is far advanced, and it is geared towards ensuring ensuring that no non-compliances are encountered in the organization. So it's a preventive kind of a model rather than a detective or a reactive model. Maker checker is there for accuracy and completeness. You can always set it up in the tool, who needs to submit, who needs to approve. An approver has a responsibility to review evidence and then give a confirmation, yes, it is complied. Or let us say if it is complied with a delay, he can always put a remarks out there. Then management can set up alert in the system when compliance is falling due. Let's say you can always have an alert saying that a compliance is coming up in next 1 week, 2 weeks. So it's like a reminder to different process owners that compliance is falling due. They may still have some understanding, but when a reminder keep coming until you make sure compliance is done, it's a regular alert ahead of time saying that you need to make sure compliance is done. This alert will not be eliminated unless that compliance is done and evidence is uploaded in the compliance tool. So therefore, a process owner may not miss daily reminders, and therefore it will improve your compliance level. Then, as I've said, that you can have a compliance status which could be assessed 2 or 3 days before the actual due date. This dashboard can go to your chief compliance officer, company secretary, board of directors, CEO, etc. And dashboard will clearly tell you what is my compliance level 2 days ahead of time, right? If you still find certain non-compliances which are figuring in it, then at a senior level there can be a push so that organization gets into 100% compliance model. Also, under this compliance tool, there are different ways in which you can make sure compliances, and sometimes you can always track contract compliance also, meaning that when a company executes certain contract, there are different terms which needs to be followed. You can do contract tracking, contract compliance tracking also within the act. That is possible. And finally, the point which we have been making is that how do you make sure that compliances are updated with respect to requirement? So if organization go for a tool, they decide to have a maintenance contract. Maintenance contract is the agency is responsible for giving you an alert of a particular rules or particular law has undergone change, and they also take a responsibility of configuring the same within the tool so that all changes are taken care in the tool itself, and therefore compliance to the change provisions are taken care of. I have seen in my audit quite a few companies who have set up the compliance tool. However, they do not have a maintenance contract. Since they do not have a maintenance contract, over a 2 to 3 year horizon, their tool becomes stale and they will fall under level 3, because multiple things would have undergone change during the period which they have not taken into consideration, and their compliance level drop. So therefore, as a good governance, you deploying a tool is only one part of it, but organization needs to make sure that it is updated regularly. It is very difficult to update in-house, reason being organization may not have large strength who has a legal understanding. It's always preferred to make some agency responsible who has developed the tool, because they have professionals who keep track of those modifications or amendments, and they keep sending it to different set of their clients, right? For them it is relatively easy for you to be updated about change in law, versus some companies trying to get it done in house. It is possible, but it is possible for a very large organization. It may not be possible for an organization where there are, for example, 2-3 legal people who are handling the entire compliance. And since it's a tool, it is updated, maker checker responsibility is there, compliance status can be tracked at any moment of time. So therefore it is a systematic reporting to the board and the audit committee, and this level will make sure that you are at anywhere between 95 to 100. It could be a range. Some organization, despite all of it, might be at 95, some will move to 98, 99, depending upon the discipline in the organization. Okay, let's now move on. What are some of the key consideration for internal auditors? First and foremost, when they audit statutory compliance, they need to look at the process of identification of applicable acts and provisions. Unless they talk about that, whatever compliance review they would have undertaken, it will never give a comfort to the board, to the management, or anybody for that matter. So always a fundamental question to be asked is, how are you making sure that all the acts and provisions are identified? Second, check whether roles and responsibility of compliances are defined. Even if the company is not having a tool, let us say they are following an Excel based tracker, unless roles and responsibility for compliances are defined, you may find certain compliances where nobody will take an ownership and it will lead to non-compliances. Let us say if compliances are managed based on the Excel tracker, one has to look for what is the process for maintaining compliance evidences, because in an Excel based tracker, unless let us say somebody has a SharePoint or a intranet based model where different compliances are taken care of, you may still not be complied with various provisions because evidences are missing. Then check if compliance status is reviewed by someone independent of the process owners. As we said, in audit there is something called maker checker. This maker checker is extremely relevant for compliances. So if process owners are the one who have been certifying, saying that we are in compliance, you may find certain instances, sometime intentional, sometime unintentional, where they report saying that compliances are done. However, either those compliances were not done, or those compliances were completed with a delay. So both the cases there are issues. I have noticed for one of the organization, they had a tool, everything was going fine, but sometime process owner wanted to kind of bypass the system, and therefore they have uploaded a blank document, meaning that some of the tool have prescribed saying that you have to have a Word file to be updated or a PDF file to be uploaded as an evidence of compliance. Since process owner hasn't done compliance, and tool will not allow him to move forward unless some file is uploaded, there were instances where blank PDF files were uploaded in the tool, and tool has accepted because system is as intelligent as we make it to be, and therefore it is a bypass. When we did an audit, we identified those cases, and unfortunately that individual who did that, he was sacked. Also, let us say if a company has a compliance tool, you got to look at how the roles and responsibilities are defined, and whether roles and responsibilities are updated based on process owners either being transferred or exited from the system. For example, if someone has exited from the system, unless the roles and responsibilities are aligned, those alert might be coming to some email ID which doesn't exist, and therefore the objective of ensuring compliance may not really be fulfilled. Yeah. Okay, let's look at some other pointers. Auditor needs to check whether process for updating compliance requirement due to change in law, business environment, addition of geography, or a new product line is in place. For example, if a company has set up a food division in a particular geography, they have to have a food license, they need to have different set of compliance, they need to have a plant testing and so on and so forth. All of these needs to be reviewed by the auditor, because there is a change in product line or change in geography or change in business environment. Let us say if someone has set up a subsidiary in Sri Lanka, one should look at what all are the acts which are applicable to Sri Lanka and whether those are being complied by that business. So auditors should look at how the business environment is changing and whether the business environment changes are taken care of in terms of the compliance requirement, be it a tool or otherwise. Also, important thing is that process owners should be trained about what is the need for compliance, what is the process which needs to be followed, and what are some of the implications of non-compliances. Sometimes process owners lack clarity on compliance and therefore they may report that there are no issues. However, there are issues. For example, as I've said in one of the example, if that scrap process owner has no visibility of differentiating between e-waste and normal scrap, he may not think that there are certain compliances which are required, right? So training is required in terms of explaining what type of compliances needs to be done, who needs to do it, and how do you really segregate roles and responsibilities and provide clarification to the process owners for making sure compliances are taken care of. Training is extremely important because when a law change, process owner may not have a visibility of what needs to be complied, how they need to comply. Since they lack clarity, they may end up having an issue which is reaching towards the last date and they may not able to fulfill the requirement, which eventually will lead to non-compliance. To avoid a non-compliance, training is an important element. Then another important thing which some of the companies who have developed tool are now providing is companies keep getting legal notices because of various reasons. Tool sometimes has a functionality to track even the legal notices, because legal notices, if you do not respond on time, it is indeed going to have a similar implication which are there for non-compliance to statutory requirement. Therefore, keep track of your legal notices also in a compliance tool is a good governance process. At least I haven't seen many organizations who are really tracking legal notices through the compliance tool, but it is a good thing to have. Also, review trend of non-compliance. There are tools in the tool, it gives you a complete history of which process owner, which department, which geography, which act non-compliances are happening. Based on that tracking, you got to identify what is missing, whether process owner is not having a clarity, whether he is negligent, or there are different other reasons. Based on the root cause of non-compliance, you can provide insights to management, board, and the audit committee of what needs to be done. Let us say if it is an issue of clarity, training is required. If it is an issue of negligence, then there is a need for him to be counseled out by way of organization as to what are some of the process he should look at in terms of adhering compliance, or whatever might be the reason. Let us say if an authorizer is authorizing that everything is done without even looking at the evidence, and you later found in the audit that there are instances of blank document being uploaded, then it's a need for looking at how robust is the reviewer mechanism. If reviewer is just doing a tick in the box, Then you got to give an insight to the management of what needs to be done. So then there is a need for a reviewer to be trained of. He should look at all of the necessary supporting and then only confirm compliance. Yeah. Okay, now we are on the last slide, which is the concluding slide, and we have got 5 minutes. Very quickly.
Mukesh, very important aspect which I thought is very relevant is the third party compliance requirement, because even though we outsource, lot of responsibility which goes to the third party are the compliance requirement which our organizations have to comply. Specifically, manufacturing units being outsourced, we are seeing primarily on the HR side, a lot of functions being outsourced. Technology, many companies are using cloud service providers. And those compliances requirement which are relevant for the organization, by virtue of they being outsourced, they are within the organization and they don't go outside the organization. So what my experience says is that these compliances and all, primarily the organization covers what is relevant for their process owners and they define the roles and responsibility. But when it comes to the third party, those things are not very well dealt with. So what has been your experience in this domain?
That is true. That is true. What happens is when you pass on any activity, there is something called a retained organization and outsourced organization. Some responsibility will continue to be there for retained organization. Like for example, even if you have outsourced payroll, your accuracy of payroll depend upon whether data is being reviewed clearly before it is being passed on to service provider. That is one. Secondly, whether the data when it is being passed on to your service provider, what are some of the cyber security elements? Then when process owner will, I mean the outsourced service provider will give you a data back, how secured it is. Then finally, when you make payment, if let us say a payment is being retained by the organization, whether same file is being taken into consideration or there are some edits. So all of these are some of the attributes. And when it comes to compliance to certain other requirement like ESI, PF, gratuity, etc., etc., sometime organization wants to retain a part of it. So essentially, we should look at what is the contracting term between organization and the outsource agency, and within the contracting term, what is the responsibility organization has, and if any of the responsibility pertains to compliance, the particular compliance requirement should be incorporated in the compliance too.
Correct. Also, there are cases where we have seen in our audit that although these tools are there and then there is a mechanism of regular update, but the responsibility or defining the who is going to be the owner is not very well defined. As per the organization structures and job responsibility, it is typically the process owner and one line above. It doesn't go to the line at the lowest level. What has been your experience on this domain?
Yeah, so I have seen most compliances are tagged to HOD, head of department, but head of department is not doing day-to-day exercise. Unless you bring it to a level who is really responsible for making sure those compliances, and he has been adequately trained in terms of knowing his responsibility and some of the requirement, you may still find an issue of compliances being delayed, because when HOD needs to review towards the last date, he may struggle because compliances have not been done. So it's an issue of fixing the responsibility at the level which is the right level. That's number one. And number two, giving him adequate training and support for him to be clear of what needs to be done and by when particular compliances are required.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to some of the concluding remarks, which is the essence of the entire session we talked about. First, adhering to regulatory compliance is a non-negotiable subject, meaning that no process owner should ever come to you saying that no, Employment Act is irrelevant, Gratuity Act, there is no penalty, over time we will manage and stuff like that. All of these are just a flimsy responses or an argument. It won't stand in court of law. Therefore, message in the organization got to be very, very loud and clear. Regulatory compliance is a non-negotiable subject up to a board level. That's one. Secondly, ad hoc way of compliances could be fatal. As I've said, if you are in level 1 to level 3, organization taking a big risk on compliances. And which act will dent you how much, it depends. As I've said, one of the consumer company got into trouble. They might have also thought that let us say a food safety regulation may not make too much of a difference, but it did made a lot of difference to the company and its fate, and therefore never ever attempt an ad hoc ways of compliance and never kind of promote that activities in the organization. Third is cost of deploying compliance tool is much lesser than cost of penalties, fines and prosecution and loss of reputation. It's very simple. You may be compliance tool might be costing you an X amount, but the penalty you got to pay for one simple non-compliance, it could be in a huge sum, and it could lead to prosecution, it could lead to headline of newspaper, and loss of reputation you just can't count. It could be $1 billion also, it depends. So therefore, very clearly, cost of having a structure is far lesser is what my view is. Then if there are any major accident or injury in the plant, it could lead to permanent shutdown of the plant. In down south, we have seen already one instance. They are struggling to get the plant open despite they have reached high court level already. Then compliances win accolades in better brand recognition and consumer confidence very clearly. If organization demonstrate right set of compliances, let us say a food safety compliance for a consumer level, consumer company, customer will get better comfort dealing with that company, and you may find eventually sale of that company is picking up, market reputation will pick up, and they will grow much faster than anybody else who is doing ad hoc ways of working. In the US, there are significant penalties if some of these non-compliances are identified for a food company, let us say food safety, or if an inhuman workers are working in inhuman condition, it can lead to $1 billion lawsuit against you. So therefore, compliances win accolades, but at the same time, non-compliance can get you into a big damage. And final concluding remarks is first line, second line, third line, governing body, statutory auditors and regulators all are interested in effective governance and compliance framework. Therefore, not even one stakeholder is missing in the entire list who is not interested in this entire subject, and therefore compliances are something which needs to be taken care of because of its positive and because of its downside also. Positives are brand recognition, accolades. Downsides are major fine, penalty, prosecution, plants shut down, etc. I think we are towards the end. Happy to take any question if anyone has.
Yeah, so Mukesh, there was one question. How three-line model is more effective than 3 lines of defense? Would you like to take this?
So okay, so it's a session by itself, so difficult to take that entire one, but there are some fine tuning which are being carried out in 3 line of defense model. First of all, IIA is saying there is no longer a defense. It's a bold play. So the defense word deletion itself means lot. That it's a aggressive ways of looking at things, and there are clarities in the 3 line of defense updated model in terms of roles are being clearly carved out and definitions are being very, very clear in 3 line model. Yukti, I would suggest that if people are interested, 3 line of updated 3-line model can be a session by itself, because
Yeah.
there are a lot of items which needs to be covered in terms of differentiation and what are some of the key attribute which needs to be looked at. This governing body concept is a new concept in 3-line model.
Yeah. Another like question which we have got is, can you suggest some tools or softwares for compliance?
There are many tools. Whosoever has asked question, I can because this is not a forum for me to talk about tools, because then it looks we are exceeding our mandate, right? But he can reach out to me. I can suggest to him there are different tools available, and I can
Yeah.
send him certain PPTs, etc., of the tools which that individual can analyze, and I can schedule meeting with those process owners also. I mean the concerned tool people also.
So Mukesh, there
Towards
is one more question which has come. What is the difference between stat auditor, tax auditor, internal audit? What specific role for each one of them? How each one of them can contribute?
So statutory auditors have been given responsibility of certain specific provisions to be taken care of. For example, they may talk about what are the specific requirement of compliance under CARO and what they need to report as part of their reporting, right? So they have a very limited view of compliance in general, and they may also be worried about whether there are any dues which are being paid beyond 6 months, whether company have paid penalty, etc. All of that needs to be reported, because in tax audit there are different implications. Similarly, in the tax auditors, if you pay, let's say, fine, etc., that should be excluded for the purpose of computation of income. I mean, those are not the deductible expense. So tax auditor also look at a very narrow view. When it comes to internal auditor will be looking at very comprehensively about the entire structure of the organization. And therefore, when directors have a responsibility of ensuring compliance, the concerned internal auditor can play a very significant role in terms of making sure that structure exists, and any gaps which are being identified in the structure are being highlighted on time. And also, if he sees a trend of certain people violating a process and it is indeed an ethical issue, then he need to bring it to the attention of management, because internal auditor is pretty much an eyes and ears of the management. So if he can bring that insight to management, it will help improve compliance level. I think that's the differentiation of roles between stat audit, tax audit, and internal auditor.
Yeah. So great. I think we've answered all the questions which came there. So we can now end the session. Thank you to all the participants for attending this, and thanks Mukesh for sharing the knowledge. And it was a great understanding of various levels and models and the overall compliance framework. Thank you, Mukesh.
Thank you, everyone. It was pleasure talking to each one of you. Happy to address any question, clarifications which you may require. Idea is that if you can understand those levels, it will really make a difference to your organization and you are being well regarded. Idea of internal auditor is not to just look at certain compliances and report. It is a very what do you say, a transactional thought process. If you can comment over structure and give a right input to the management for taking action, they will definitely appreciate, and compliance level will improve for the organization. I think that's the concluding remarks. Thank you everyone for joining. Have a nice evening ahead.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, sir.
Thanks,
Thank
Chanchal.
you, ma'am. Yeah.
Thank
For
you,
the great
Chanchal.
session.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am, and
Thank
thank
you.
you, sir.
Bye-bye.
And thanks all
Bye.
the participants for your great participation, and sir for the great session. So we are closing the webinar. So we have more webinars during the month. We have 7 scheduled. So please register early so that we can give you the link on time.
Sure.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much. Thanks.